Marcus Doyle throws my termination letter onto my desk like it's beneath his fingers, and 3 years of my life end in under 4 seconds. Worthless, he says. You still can't close a single account over 50 grand. Maybe sales just isn't your thing, Ellis. Laughter. Not loud, the kind people think is quiet enough not to count. I'm standing there in a $200 suit that costs more than my rent, holding a cardboard box HR handed me before the meeting even started, like the outcome was decided before I walked in. My name is Corin Ellis. 40 minutes ago, I was the lowest performing account executive at Holloway Financial Group, a mid-tier firm clawing for relevance in a city that eats mid-tier firms for breakfast. 40 minutes ago, I still believed effort meant something. Here's the part that makes this whole thing insane. I wasn't bad at sales. I was good at reading people. Too good, maybe. I could tell you what a client wanted before they said it out loud. I just never had the nerve to use it. Every pitch softened. Every close I could have forced, let slip. Marcus called it weak. I called it decent. Decent doesn't pay rent in this city. Get out, Marcus says, already back on his phone. Security will walk you down. I don't argue. Pride's the only thing I have left in this building, and I refuse to let it crack in front of people who've waited 3 years for this. So I walk. I don't cry. I get in the elevator alone. That's when it happens. Small, almost cruel in how small it seems. The doors close. The overhead light flickers. And something behind my eyes shifts. Sharp, cold, recalibrated by something that isn't me. I blink. The doors open on the lobby, and the security guard waiting to escort me out looks at me, and I see it. Not his face. Something under his face. A single phrase. Faint and gold, hovering past his shoulder like a subtitle only I can read. Desperate to be seen as competent. Terrified of being replaced by his nephew. What? I whisper. You say something? He asks. Nothing, I say. No explanation. Whatever just happened doesn't explain itself to people like me. It never has. I walk out onto the sidewalk, holding a stapler and a photo of my dead dog, and I tell myself I imagined it. Stress, humiliation, my brain inventing a distraction from the fact that I'm 31 and unemployed in a city where rent alone eats my savings in 4 months. I don't believe that for long. I walk 3 blocks to a coffee shop I can't afford anymore, because I need to sit somewhere that isn't my apartment. The barista hands me my order, and there it is again. Gold text, faint, bolted onto reality. Wants to quit and paint full-time. Convinced she's too old to start over. I stare too long. She stares back. Uncomfortable. Enjoy your coffee, she says, in the voice of someone who wants this conversation over. I sit by the window. My hands are shaking, and it isn't the coffee. Every person on the street has one. A want, a fear, floating behind them like a name tag nobody else can see. And I'm the only person in this city who got handed the roster. An old man walking his dog, afraid his son only visits because he thinks he's dying. A woman laughing loud into her phone, terrified the laugh isn't landing, that everyone can tell she's performing happiness. A teenager against a lamppost, wants someone, anyone, to ask if he's okay before he has to say it first. I should have known that was the strangest thing that would happen to me that day. It wasn't. My phone buzzes. Unknown number. I almost ignore it. I don't. Corin Ellis, the voice says. My name is Vance Whitmore. The first run, a firm 3 blocks from where you're currently standing, and I have exactly one question for you. I don't answer. I don't know how he knows where I'm standing. Do you know what you're worth to me, Mr. Ellis? He says. Because I think you're about to make both of us obscenely rich, and you don't even understand why yet. I look down at my box. At the stapler I'll never need again. I'm listening, I say. Big mistake. His, not mine. He has no idea what he just handed a phone number to. Vance Whitmore's office doesn't look like an office. It looks like a museum built to make you feel small the second you walk in. Floor-to-ceiling glass. A desk worth more than my old salary. Vance himself, back turned to the window, like he already knows I'll wait as long as he wants. Sit, he says, without turning around. I sit. I'm going to guess something about you, he says, finally facing me. You've had a strange day. Strange in a way you can't explain to anyone, because if you tried, they'd think you'd lost your mind. I don't answer. My silence is answer enough. He smiles. Not warm. The smile of a man who's been waiting for something and just watched it walk through his door on time. 3 years ago, he says, I hired a boy who could do what I think you can do now. Read, people. Not guess. Read. He made me $40 million in 18 months. Then, he had a breakdown in this office and quit. I've been searching for a replacement ever since. What happened to him? I ask. His smile doesn't move. That's not the question you should be asking. He slides a folder across the desk. A client profile. Reginald Cho, CEO of a logistics company worth 9 figures, deciding whether to invest in Vance's fund or walk. Tell me what he wants, Vance says. Not what he says. What he actually wants. I've never done this on command. I've only ever had it happen to me. But I look at the photo, and the gold text arrives anyway, unbidden, desperate to prove his father wrong. Thinks money is the only language his father ever respected. Will say no to anything that looks like charity, yes to anything that looks like conquest. I say all of it. Every word. Vance doesn't blink. He picks up his phone right there in front of me, and 20 minutes later Reginald Cho is on speaker agreeing to terms he'd rejected twice, because Vance stopped pitching an investment and started pitching a war his father would have to watch him win. When the call ends, Vance looks at me the way Marcus Doyle never did. Not contempt, hunger. Congratulations, Mr. Ellis, he says. You just made this firm $11 million in one phone call. Welcome to Whitmore Capital. Great, just great. 40 minutes ago I couldn't close a $50,000 account. Now I'm sitting in a chair that just printed $11 million out of thin air, and I don't understand the machine I just became. Here's what I didn't know yet. The part that should have terrified me immediately and didn't. Because I was too busy being relieved someone finally saw me as useful. Vance doesn't hire people. He collects them. And every person he's ever collected owed him something before the ink dried. The first month is a blur of desire made visible. I read investors, board members, men who've spent decades building walls around what they actually want. And I walk through every wall in under 4 seconds, because gold text doesn't care how expensive your suit is. 40% clarity maybe, that first week. Enough to catch fragments. By week 3 it's closer to 70. Full sentences, no static. I stop being decent. Decent doesn't survive a month at Whitmore Capital. The first start closing every deal Vance puts in front of me, because I'm not selling anymore. I'm answering a question nobody else in the room can even hear being asked. By week 6, my old coworkers hear my name in rooms they'll never enter. By week 8, Marcus Doyle sends a LinkedIn message I don't answer. By week 10, I have a corner office and a bank balance with more zeros than I've ever seen attached to my own name. I should be celebrating. I'm not fully. Because if 3 years at Holloway taught me anything, it's that sudden power without leverage gets you used fast in this industry. And Vance Whitmore didn't build an empire by sharing it. I find out how far his hunger goes on a Tuesday night, working late, walking past his office when the door is open just enough. He hasn't broken yet, Vance is saying, voice low, controlled in a way it never is with me. Give him another month. The last one lasted 4 before he cracked. This one's stronger. I want to see how far the gift takes him before it takes him apart. I freeze in the hallway. He hasn't broken yet. I think about the boy before me. $40 million, then a breakdown in this same office. Vance never told me what happened to him after. Vance only ever told me what he was worth. I sit down at my own desk, and for the first time since the elevator, I let myself actually look at what's floating behind Vance whenever he glances at me through the glass. I hadn't read him yet. Not once, not because I couldn't, because some part of me didn't want to know. I look now, desperate to become unreadable to the very thing he's building. Not greed, not ambition, something colder. Fear, wearing a $3,000 suit. I don't understand it yet, but I file it away, because I've learned one thing in 10 weeks at this firm. The things people are most afraid of are always the things worth watching closest. The next morning, someone new is in Vance's office. Late 20s, sharp eyes, sharper posture. Naomi Reyes, head of client relations. She doesn't smile. She studies me the way I usually study clients, and, for one disorienting second, I wonder if she has a version of what I have too. She doesn't. I check, waiting to see if this one lasts longer than the others. There it is again. Corin's going to shadow you on the Kessler account, Vance tells her. Learn how she handles pressure. She's the best closer I've ever built. Built, not hired, built. I don't say anything, I just nod, because that's what you do when a man just accidentally tells you exactly what you are to him. 3 days in, working late, Naomi finally asks the question I've been waiting for someone to ask. How long have you had it? She says, not looking up from her laptop. Had what? I say, even though we both know, whatever it is you do in meetings, she says. You go quiet for half a second, then say the exact sentence that ends the negotiation. I've watched you do it 4 times this week. You're not reading body language, Corin. Nobody's that good. 3 months, I say. Since the day I got fired. Since then? Every day since. She's quiet a long moment. Then, low enough not to carry, there was a man here before you. Elias Marsh. Vance's golden boy for almost 2 years. He had something too. I never knew what. Vance kept him quiet, moved him between deals like a secret weapon nobody was allowed to look at directly. What happened to him? He stopped being able to turn it off, she says. Started seeing it in everyone, everywhere. His wife, his friends, strangers on the street. Said it got so loud, he couldn't tell the difference between someone's deepest fear and someone just being tired on a Tuesday. He quit one day and never came back. Vance had 2 lawyers and an NDA at his apartment within 6 hours. 6 hours. Vance doesn't lose assets quietly, Naomi says. He never has. I think about his voice through that half-open door. He hasn't broken yet. I think about the fact that I haven't turned this off since the elevator. Not once. Not lying in bed, watching my own roommate's fear float behind her door like a caption I never asked to read. Desperate for someone to admit they're struggling first, so she doesn't have to be the one who breaks the silence. I hadn't told anyone that. Who exactly do you tell? Which of my friends is equipped to hear I can see the exact shape of what scares them? Whatever this is, Naomi says quietly, don't let Vance find out how much it's costing you. Not until you understand what he does with the ones who reach their limit. I don't sleep that night. The next morning, the file on Vance's desk isn't a client, it's a mirror. My profile, bank records, therapy history I never told him about, my roommate's name, my dog's actual name, everything. Let's talk about your next contract, Corin, he says, and this time, full exclusivity. 10 years. No outside consulting, no quiet shopping of my gift to Blackstone the second someone offers a bigger office. In exchange, richest 31-year-old in the city by 32. How do you have this? I ask, staring at records I paid out of pocket specifically so they'd never touch insurance paperwork. I have this on everyone who works for me who matters, he says. Not personal. Due diligence. I don't build my future on people I don't fully understand. Built. There's that word again. I don't sign today, I say, and something flickers behind his eyes. Not anger, recalculation. Of course, he says smoothly. Take the weekend. Think about the number. He tells me the number. Obscene. The kind that rewires how a person thinks about their whole life in the 4 seconds it takes to hear it. I walk out, and my hands are shaking, same as the sidewalk 3 months ago. Except this time, it isn't wonder. It's dread. Wearing Wonder's clothes. Naomi slides a folded note across my desk an hour later and walks away before I can ask anything. Don't sign anything before you talk to me. Not here. The diner on 9th, 7 p.m. I go. Of course I go. I found Elias, she says. No preamble, phone face down on the table between us. Took 2 days and a favor from a friend at a records office. He's alive. Living under a name that isn't his. 4 hours from here. Agreed to 11 minutes on a payphone because he said Vance's lawyers still monitor certain numbers. 11 minutes. Here's what he told me, she says, dropping her voice. The gift doesn't just show up randomly in people who get fired from finance jobs, Corin. Vance finds specific candidates. People right at the edge of collapse. Professional, personal, doesn't matter, as long as the fracture's deep enough. And something in that exact moment triggers it. Elias thinks Vance engineers it. Some kind of exposure, right before the ability activates. Couldn't prove it, but the timing was too perfect to be coincidence twice. I think about the elevator. The flickering light. The half-second recalibration. I'd assumed it was random. My own mind cracking under pressure. What if someone helped it crack exactly then? Marcus Doyle fired you in front of the whole office, Naomi says, watching my face. Out of nowhere, after 3 years of mediocre reviews he never once escalated? I don't answer. I'm already running the timeline backward, and it's lining up in a way that drops my stomach through the floor of the diner. Elias said the same happened to him, she continues. Sudden termination, public humiliation, completely out of character for the company. He always wondered if Vance had a hand in it, setting the conditions, then finding him within days. Exactly like he found you. Why go through all that, I ask, instead of just hiring someone who already has it? Because you can't buy this raw off the street, Naomi says. Elias thinks it has to be triggered, manufactured. Once Vance finds someone with the right wiring underneath, All he has to do is push them off the exact cliff at the exact moment, and be standing at the bottom with a business card. Neither of us says anything for a long moment, because there's no version of this that doesn't feel like the floor dropping out from under everything I thought was luck. "There's more," Naomi says, Elias said, right before he hung up. "Tell the new one, check who's running Holloway Financial's board now. Check who sits on it." I don't need to check. I already saw the headline scroll past 2 months after I left and didn't think twice. I pull up the name with hands that aren't entirely steady. Vance Whitmore. The first stare at the letters until they stop being words. "He didn't find me," I say out loud, and my voice sounds wrong in my own ears. "He engineered me. He probably had a hand in Marcus Doyle's decision too," Naomi says. "Board chairs don't usually involve themselves in which mid-level account executive gets fired on a random Tuesday. Unless that executive is specifically the one he's been watching. That's not a firing. That's a controlled demolition." "Why me, out of everyone at that company?" Elias said. "Vance has screeners," Naomi says. "Some psychological profile. People close to breaking who also happen to have the raw wiring. He's been doing this for years." Elias wasn't the first. He's fairly sure he wasn't even the second. The others. That phrase keeps returning like a bruise I keep pressing on purpose. "How many?" I ask. She shakes her head. He didn't know. Vance is careful. Spreads them out. Different cities sometimes. Never two at once inside the same firm. So nobody compares notes the way we're doing right now. I sit with that horror. And underneath it, something else surfaces. Cold. Clear. New. If he can engineer the trigger, I say slowly, then it's not something I earned. It's not something I unlocked through suffering. It's a mechanism. Something with rules, which means it has edges, limits. Something I can study instead of just endure. That's not the reaction I expected, Naomi says. I've spent 3 months assuming this is happening to me, I say. Maybe it's time I figure out what I can do with it. On my own terms, before Vance decides my next contract for me. My phone buzzes on the table. Unknown number. I already know before I answer. "Corin," Vance's voice says. Warm, easy, entirely too casual for a Friday. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I look at Naomi. Her face has gone very still. "Just dinner," I say. "With Miss Reyes, I imagine," he says. And the warmth doesn't shift at all, which is somehow worse than if it had. "Give her my regards. And Corin, take all the time you need this weekend, no pressure at all." He hangs up before I respond. "He knows I'm here," I say. "Of course he does," Naomi says, already reaching for her coat. "He's had eyes on both of us since the day he hired you. Probably longer on me." I walk 4 blocks the wrong direction before I stop and actually think. Because for the first time since the elevator, I need to use what I have on purpose, instead of letting it happen to me. I close my eyes on the sidewalk. Instead of waiting for the text to arrive, I push toward it. I picture Vance's face deliberately, the way I'd picture a client's file before a meeting. Something shifts, sharper, like turning a dial instead of catching a signal by accident. 90% clarity, maybe higher. And there, exactly where his phrase always sits, something new arrives, something I never saw before because I never pushed hard enough to look. Needs Corin to sign before the board vote in 11 days, or the entire restructuring collapses and everyone finds out what he actually did to build this firm. 11 days, a board vote. I open my eyes, breathing hard, because I just did something I didn't know I could do. I didn't wait for the truth to surface on its own. I went and got it. And now I know something Vance never intended. Whatever he's building, he needs my signature to finish it, inside 11 days. For the first time since this nightmare started, I'm not the only one on a clock. He is too. Day 2. I do exactly what Vance expects. Nothing. I go to work. I smile at the interns. I close a mid-size acquisition for a hedge fund manager, whose gold text tells me he's terrified his son thinks he's a coward for selling the family business. And I close it in 4 minutes flat. Because right now, the safest thing I can do is look exactly as predictable as I've been for 3 months. Underneath the predictable, I'm working. Day 4. Naomi gets me into records under the pretense of pulling old client files. What we actually pull is every restructuring document Holloway's filed with the state in 6 months. It takes a night, spread across her kitchen table, coffee going cold, to understand what we're looking at. Vance isn't just chairing Holloway's board. He's using Whitmore Capital to quietly buy up distressed shares to force a merger. one that folds Holloway's entire client book and every liability buried inside it, straight under his firm's umbrella. Once the vote passes, Holloway disappears, and every irregularity, every fired employee who got too close to something, every trail back to how he built his so-called gifted assets, gets buried under paperwork nobody will ever have reason to dig through again. He needs a controlling signature block to force it clean, Naomi says, finger tracing the filing. And you're on it. Look, my name? Buried 3 pages deep in a proxy authorization I don't remember signing, dated the week I started, granting Vance discretionary voting rights over shares I didn't know I owned. He gave me equity, I say slowly, understanding arriving like a cold tide. In the signing bonus. I never even looked closely. I was too busy being grateful someone finally wanted me. That equity votes with him automatically, Naomi says, unless you personally revoke it before the meeting, which means right now, without doing anything, you're helping him win. For the first time in 3 months, the anger under the fear finally has somewhere to go. I don't have to sign a new contract to stop this, I say. I just have to take back what's already mine. Revoking it publicly, before the vote, tells him, you know everything, Naomi says. There's no version of this where he doesn't realize exactly what you figured out. Good, I say. I'm tired of being the only one in the room who doesn't know what's actually happening. Day 9. I request a meeting myself. He agrees immediately, warm as ever, like he's been waiting for me to come to him the whole time instead of the reverse. I've been thinking about your offer, I say, sitting in the same chair I sat in on day 1, holding a folder of my own this time. And, he says, already counting the money in his head, I want to understand something first, I say, and I push toward him deliberately, not waiting. This time it doesn't flicker. Needs this vote to close before anyone connects Holloway's terminated employees to Whitmore Capital's client list. Needs Corin specifically. The only asset stable enough to survive public scrutiny if the vote gets challenged. I want to know about Marcus Doyle, I say. And whoever asked him to fire me on a Tuesday, in front of the whole floor, 40 minutes before you called my phone. The warmth doesn't disappear all at once. It goes slowly, like a dial being turned down, and underneath it is exactly the cold I read behind his eyes the very first week, and chose not to look at closely enough. Interesting theory, he says carefully. It's not a theory, I say. I have Elias Marsh's account. I have the proxy filing with my equity on it. I have the board vote in 2 days. And I have this, 1 sheet of paper, 1 sentence, the exact phrase I pulled from his mind 30 seconds ago, word for word. He reads it, and for the first time since the elevator, I watch someone else's face change the way I've watched everyone else's for 3 months. Fear, real fear, not performed, not managed. Exactly the way I bet it arrived for Elias Marsh 2 years ago, right before 2 lawyers and an NDA showed up at his apartment inside 6 hours. How is the only word he manages. You built me to read people, I say standing. You just forgot I might eventually read you. I walk out. I don't look back to see what's floating behind him. I already know. The board meeting sits on the top floor of a building I've never entered. Glass walls, 12 chairs, a silence thick enough that I don't need any gift to read the room. Naomi's near the back, the only person who looks glad I came instead of like I'm a problem that wandered in. Vance sits at the head, composed again. Fear from 2 days ago folded neatly under his usual warmth. Mr. Ellis isn't on today's agenda, someone says. 5 minutes, I say. Before you vote. Vance's jaw tightens, and the text arrives without me even pushing. Contain this now, before it costs everything. Corin, he says smoothly, this isn't the venue for a personal grievance. It's not personal, I say, setting the folder down. It's the reason half of you are about to vote on a merger built on shares he doesn't actually have clean authority over. I lay it out the way I've closed every deal for 3 months, except this time I'm not selling anyone anything, just handing them the truth and letting it do the work one used to think required charm. The proxy filed without informed consent. Elias Marsh's disappearance. The NDA, the pattern of terminations timed to Vance's private acquisitions, each landing a new asset in his firm within hours of the collapse he engineered. I don't need the gift to see I've landed it. Board members shifting, papers pulled toward chests instead of pushed away. The particular stillness of people recalculating how much of this room they want their name attached to by the end of the hour. This is unsubstantiated, Vance says, and the warmth is gone completely now. Underneath is the man I overheard through a half-open door 3 months ago. Give him another month. This one's stronger. I revoked my proxy this morning, I say, sliding the confirmation across, which means the controlling block you needed no longer exists. You can still hold the vote. It just won't do what you built it to do. The room goes quiet. And for the first time since I walked into Whitmore Capital, holding nothing but a phone call and a stapler, I watch his composure actually break. Not in front of a client he's managing, in front of 12 people who hold his empire's future in their hands. This is a mistake, Corin, he says. And it isn't quite a threat. It's closer to desperate. Whatever you think you've found, walk away from it now, and I'll make you richer than you can imagine. I'll make Naomi a partner. I'll make this problem disappear entirely. The way I always have. The way you always have, I repeat. Like Elias. Something in his face confirms it before he says a word. Everyone in the room sees it too. The board votes to table the merger pending independent investigation. Not a total victory. Men like Vance Whitmore don't collapse in a single afternoon, and I already know, walking out beside Naomi, that this isn't over. He'll have lawyers by tonight. A news story by tomorrow. Somewhere out there is probably another candidate already being screened. Someone standing at the exact edge of collapse, waiting for a phone call that will feel like salvation, and is actually a trap built specifically for them. But for the first time since an elevator door closed on my old life, I'm not the only one who knows what he is. What now? Naomi asks, on the sidewalk. I think about Elias, living under a name that isn't his, 4 hours away, still afraid of a phone that might ring. I think about every person Vance screened and broke and buried under an NDA before I ever walked through his door. Now, I say, I find out how many others there are. I don't wait for the text to arrive on its own. I push toward the whole city at once, the way I've learned to do exactly what I need it to do. And somewhere out there, faint and scattered across signals I've never tried to read all at once, I feel it. Not one person's hidden desire. Dozens, all shaped the same cold way, all recently fired, all recently, suspiciously, offered a phone call that sounded exactly like salvation. Great. Just great, because that's when a second signal cuts through the noise, closer than the others, sharper. A phrase forming behind someone standing less than a block away. Someone I haven't looked at yet. Someone who's been walking half a step behind us since we left the building. Confirm the target has no idea we're already inside her apartment. I don't get to finish reading it. My phone buzzes. Unknown number. I already know who it is before I answer.